Welcome to Fuel Her Awesome, the nutrition pep talk to supercharge your week. I'm Jess, registered dietitian and empowered eating coach, here to help you take your health to that next level. In these bite-sized episodes, we cut right through the noise and blend science with biofeedback and values, all while teaching you how to trust your intricately and beautifully designed body. Because here's the deal, you are awesome, and life is an invitation to show up that way. But you can't do it without food. So let's lean in as we explore how to fuel your awesome with empowered eating. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you're here. Man, we're talking about a hot topic today. We're talking about hormone health, and I'm so excited. Hormones are real. They have a real imposition on our lives. My gosh, I'll never forget the first time I found out and connected the dots that hormones impact me on a mental and visceral level. I was, maybe 25, and I was working at a great job. It was in corporate wellness, but I was having a day, and I took a minute. I went outside, and I went for a walk. We had this beautiful park that you could walk around. So I'm walking around the park and really contemplating my life. You know, I'm walking through where I'm at and starting to really question, have I done it all wrong? Did I screw everything up? And no joke, I'm walking through this park doing an inventory of my life, thinking the only thing I did right was marry my husband because he's still cute and I still like him, at least at this point on the walk. And I get halfway around and it dawns on me, I thought the exact same thing almost exactly a month prior, and it passed within a couple days. And so I recognized that I had this pattern, and I still have these days. A couple weeks before my period, I have 1 or 2 days where I call them my I give up on life days. And I just know my brain does not interpret my current circumstance in a rational, logical way. I hate everything. I've done everything wrong. Everything is failing. Nothing is working. I'm not pretty. Nobody likes me, all of those things. And I would like to say I've outgrown that, but if I'm being totally honest, I haven't. Those days still pop up. But the difference now is I have an awareness about them and I know how to navigate them. And so on those days, I have some protocols that I follow. Number one, I don't make any decisions and I do not engage with my thoughts. I have this little deal with myself where I'll say, okay, if I am still worried about this or upset about this in another 1 or 2 days, I will revisit it and I'll work through it. But for now, I'm just going to, put it on the shelf and come back to it. I slow down a bit. I don't push myself as much during the week. Maybe I skip a workout and have a day where I sit and I journal, or I'm a planner girl. I like to sit in my planner and dream. So I'll just take notes in there. And then I also just do some basic self-care where I carve out some downtime. I get a really cozy blanket, light a delicious candle, and watch some of my favorite trashy television, which is usually Gossip Girl. And you know what? In 2 days, it does pass. And so what that taught me is that the more we learn and understand our hormones, the more we can learn to maybe not so much control them, but work with them and learn how to weather them. Because here's some jarring truths. Men have a small fluctuation in their hormones. They actually have a spike in testosterone by about 25%, usually in the mornings, and it slowly declines over time. And then at age 30, they start to lose about 1% of their testosterone every year. It's a very slow process. So I think of them and they're like on cruise control. We women are riding a freaking roller coaster, and it's a scenic route, and there's ups and downs and valleys, and we don't know where we are. So I really think getting an awareness of what's happening with our hormones can really help us then make educated decisions on what to do next. And that's what we're all about here in the empowered eating world, is making educated decisions based on science and biofeedback led by our values. And we are going to unpack some of that here today. So this will be a 2-part series. This first episode will be laying this foundation of what the heck is happening on our roller coaster of hormones. And then we will talk about some foundational steps we can take to care for ourselves regardless of where we are at on that roller coaster of hormones. And then part 2, we're going to talk about the mental impact of hormones, because like I mentioned with that initial story, that there is a real connection between our mental well-being, how we view our body, and what's happening with our hormones. And so that'll be really fun to get a better understanding of what's happening biologically as we weather those I give up on life days. So I'm super excited to unpack this. Now, before I dive in, I just want to say a few things. So we are going to really lean heavy into the behavioral and the nutritional elements of managing hormone fluctuation. And I am really passionate about this. I did a post on my Instagram a few weeks ago about why my husband and I have decided not to do hormone replacement therapy or HRT at this point in our lives. Now, that's not to say I'll never do it. I think the research behind HRT through the menopausal years is really astounding. And I'm so grateful that that tool is going to be there when I get to menopause. And I don't know if I'll add some before then. I don't know. But what I do know is that I think we are in a moment in our culture where hormones are getting a lot of attention. We are giving language to the perimenopausal years, which I think is amazing. And I never want us to underestimate how powerful and strong and resilient our bodies are when we give them a chance. And I am, like I said, in no means against HRT, but I am going to advocate for us doing what we can to care for it at the foundational level before we go into HRT. And I do feel strongly about that because I believe your body is incredibly and beautifully designed. And even hormonal changes, even the fluctuations, they are not a product of your body being broken. And you have more power than I think you recognize within your body's capacity. I think of it very similar to girls going through puberty. And when a young teenager doesn't have her period, I can't even tell you how many clients I have met with who have gone to doctor after doctor after doctor, test after test. Why isn't she starting her period? What's happening? And they end up putting her on birth control and hormones. And then they come see me. All they needed was a little bit more nutrition. And so I think, again, this hormone health playbook and the podcast episode isn't to say that there isn't a time and a place for birth control or HRT, but I just think we need to give nutrition the attention it deserves in this conversation. So all that to say, we are not going to be hitting on HRT in these episodes, but we are going to be talking about what you can do like today without a prescription. And I hope you find a lot of hope and empowerment with that. And if you have decided to start HRT at any point, just know that these pieces of the puzzle are going to only help you, and they will help you get more out of your hormone replacement therapy. All right, let's go ahead and let's dive in. So we're going to start with the big picture of the overview of your cycle, because I think it's really important to understand this piece. So I'm going to fly through this, but I just want to make sure we all have a very clear understanding and know some of this language. So there are 4 phases in your menstrual cycle. The first phase is actually when you start your period. So day 1 of your period is when your uterus sheds and your progesterone and your estrogen actually plummet. That is when we are most like the boys in the world. We can think more logically and rational on day 1 or a few days into our period because those hormones have started to come down. Then about 2 weeks after that, give or take, there is the follicular phase. This is where we start having a rise in estrogen and follicular growth. This is where we are getting ready to ovulate. Phase 3 is ovulation. This is the peak in our estrogen. So this is where we have that like kind of boost of energy. There is a luteinizing hormone surge. And ideally, we should have a couple days here where we feel like superwoman. And if you follow some of your trends, like during this time, typically women have some like viscous discharge. It's a clear discharge, and this is really the body priming itself for ovulation. And pay attention, if you have some of those symptoms, what is your mood doing, man? On my ovulation days, I am like thinking I am a unicorn and just strutting around. But it doesn't last very long, because after you ovulate, we go into the luteal phase. This is where progesterone really rises, estrogen becomes more moderate, and we prepare for either pregnancy or to shed the uterine lining again. Now, this luteal phase, it's so funny. I had a client the other day refer to it as the Lucifer phase because This is when hormones are changing rapidly. They are higher and lower and dropping, and we start to have more of those symptoms that can be problematic and infiltrate our lives. So we tend to be more moody. We are more sensitive to carbohydrates during this phase. We have a higher metabolism, so we actually need a bit more carbohydrates. So it's very confusing for our brain because we're going, I'm craving the ice cream, but I feel worse when I eat the ice cream. And so this phase is one that comes with bloating, emotions, and always holds my I give up on life days. Now, those 4 phases happen about every 28 to 34 days, give or take, depending on your patterns. Now, as you know, we start that in the teens, mid-20s to early 30s, we're pretty stable, but starting in our 30s, we see a subtle decline in ovarian reserve, and we start to enter those perimenopausal years where hormones really start to swing and cycles start to become irregular. And then from there, about age 50, 60 plus, we start to actually lose our cycles. We have sustained low estrogen and low progesterone, and that's where we enter the menopausal years. So I'm going to be hitting on things that exacerbate hormone imbalance, because when we're looking at even the pubescent years, the postpartum years, the perimenopausal years, and certainly the transition into menopause, the hardest part of all of those seasons is the shifts, like the imbalances when our body is starting to change because we are getting older, but our body's not used to this new level, whether it's lower or higher. And so we don't know how to manage it. And I think automatically any of those imbalances we receive as like something's wrong. And, we might have some things off, but here's what I love about biofeedback is instead of just going, oh, I'm broken, something's wrong, we can learn to listen and modify it. I think of it kind of like, the poop report. I talk a lot about reading your bowel movements to better understand how nutrition and food is connected to your gut health. And sometimes we're going to get it wrong. Like sometimes we're going to have bowel movements that are just horrendous. And that doesn't mean the whole system is broken, but we do need to start unpacking some things. And so I think the same goes with our hormones, is that sometimes things are off. And especially in those transition seasons, when we have the big shifts, we interpret any like new symptom as something's wrong. No, if we can just tune in and listen and then modify some of the risk factors that may be contributing to those swings, I think we're going to feel a lot more empowered. So let's unpack some things that actually exacerbate hormone imbalance. So in other words, if you're going through puberty, perimenopause, postpartum, menopause, any of those, you're already in a roller coaster. You're already going through hormonal swings. And these are going to be things that impact it and exacerbate it. So number one, this chronic stress. Elevated cortisol. This disrupts what's called the HPO axis. The HPO axis, I think of it like the command center for reproductive hormones. This includes the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and your ovaries. Now, the hypothalamus, this is your brain's control tower. It releases gonadotropin-releasing hormone in pulses, and this pulse generator is sensitive to stress, sleep, nutrition, and how much food you have actually eaten. Now, the pituitary gland, this is our little messenger guy. He responds to that gonadotropin-releasing hormone by sending out the follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These hormones then tell the ovaries what to do each cycle. Ovaries are then the responders to those messages. And in response to luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone, the ovaries they produce estrogen and progesterone, and these hormones regulate the menstrual cycle, fertility, bone health, mood, and so much more. So this hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and ovaries, they all make up the HPO axis. And when we have chronically elevated cortisol or stress levels, it disrupts that HPO axis. So that's a big one. Another one is poor sleep and circadian disruption. This alters hormonal rhythms. Now, this one used to make me really mad because when I was in my early years with my babies, who were both terrible sleepers, in part because they were snuggle bunnies and they just always wanted to crawl in bed with me. And I don't know what it was. My oldest, he crawled in bed with me and I would crash out. My youngest, he crawled in bed with me and it was like I was activated, probably because him and I are so alike. His energy is really big and he always wants more. And he's an adventure seeker and doesn't want to go to bed. And I look at him and I'm like, you are exhausting. And then I look at my husband and I think, is this what it's like to be married to me? And so, during those years when I had just terrible sleep, I absolutely had hormonal imbalances. And I think when I share this with you, I want you to know that I'm not listing this in a way for you. I don't want you to feel hopeless. I want you to know these are things that do disrupt it. And so if you feel like things are disrupted, you're not crazy. And we'll talk about some things we can do at the end to help support these things and do the best we can in the season we're in. But like right now, just recognize this is your permission slip. If you're getting terrible sleep, guess what? There are things in your hormones that are going to be slightly off. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because your babes are crawling into bed with you, or you're really stressed at work, or whatever it is that is stealing your sleep. Just know that this does have an impact. Inadequate or excess energy intake. This is a big one. If you are eating below your energy needs or above, this is going to dysregulate your hormones. It's going to affect that HPO axis. And I'm a big advocate for recognizing that under eating impacts it. I think women are drilled to not overeat, and that is really clear in our culture, but we do not address the dangers of under eating. And they actually just came out with this huge study of over 85,000 individuals and found that there were more health comorbidities associated with under eating than there were with overeating. So inadequate nutrition matters. Another one is nutrient deficiency. So if we're low in iron, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D, all of these will impact our hormonal balance because they all play a role in how those hormones move through our body. For me, this one was huge. So I wasn't sleeping well. My gut health was off. Because my gut health was off, I was low in iron, B12, zinc, and vitamin D. And that ultimately was feeding my hormonal imbalances. So all of these things were playing together. Gut dysbiosis. So if we have any inflammation or gut imbalances, that is going to impact how we receive nutrition. And that in turn will receive what tools we have available to support stress or sleep. So gut health is huge, huge, huge. And, I want to say one quick thing about gut health. I met with a client yesterday who had tried all the diets and she was really trying to figure out what foods trigger her GI symptoms. We ran a few tests on her. We did a GI map and a food sensitivity test. And what we found is in terms of football, she does not have a passing problem. She has a receiving problem. So in other words, the food she's putting into her body are not the problem. It's how her body's receiving those foods. And that was because there was a gut imbalance. All right, a couple more things that can impact or exacerbate hormonal imbalance, and that's environmental toxins, these microplastics, food additives, all the things that social media has made us very afraid of. Those can impact our hormones. But again, we're going to talk about how the body can weather those in just a few. And then high glycemic load. So having like really high spikes in our blood sugar from eating foods that are primarily carb-based. So it is candy corn season. It's October. Me and my kids absolutely love candy corns, but man, they are loaded with sugar. I mean, it's pure sugar and food dye. And I was telling my boys the other day, they said, can we just snack on candy corn? And I said, no, but you can have some candy corns with some peanuts and some water. And so when we think of glycemic load, I don't want you to think that you can never eat sugar, but it's how we eat sugar that can impact how our bodies digest that. Okay, so there's the list of like the wah, like all the things that impact us. And here's what's really cool though. Our body is designed to weather that. Guys, humans have survived for thousands and millions or whatever origin story you believe in is going to change the timeline on that. But we have been around the block and we have survived, and we have survived because our bodies are really good at adapting when we take care of them. Here's some really cool things. Hormone health in your 30s and 40s actually sets the stage for your perimenopause and menopausal years. When we take care of ourselves inside that window, we start to lift more weights, we start to add in the right supplements, we start to balance our nutrition, we set ourselves up to go into menopause better. And we've seen now in the research that those years are crucial for a healthier and more pleasant transition into menopause. We also now know there's something called the critical window hypothesis. And this is actually the really cool research on adding in some hormonal support and some behavioral support during the early stages of menopause. And there's a lot of power, again, in learning to weather that body or weather that season well, because we now know the science has caught up and it's given us really, really strong tools. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to map out 5 foundational steps for weathering these hormonal fluctuations. Because sister, they're happening. It's not just a matter of when, it's now, it is happening. It's happening on a 28 to 32 day cycle. It's going to continue to happen through our lives, and we just need these tools to weather them. Okay, I have a dorky acronym for these 5 steps. It's ALIFE, because a life with more balanced hormones is a better life. And so I've got one for ALIFE. So the A is for adapt stress. And I had mentioned cortisol has a big impact on our hormones and our health and how we sleep. And I think we have to have a really honest conversation about our stress. Guys, I have had to have this talk with myself on repeat. And this year in particular has been quite the learning curve. I mean, both my boys started sports. We host a small group. I've got my own business and it's growing. We do a lot of traveling and camping. We have a lot of wonderful things in our life, but here's the reality. I'm not sure the life we are continuing to build is one that's going to continue to fit me. And there are things I'm going to have to say no to at some point. Actually, my husband and I have scheduled a little date day at the end of the month to do some inventory, because we recognize that cramming so much into our life is coming at the expense of sleep, of our intimacy, of our connection. It comes at a cost. And so one thing I want you to know about your stress is that while there are some things that are out of your control, and if we're talking trauma or things happening to you guys, that's actually a different conversation. And so if that's you, just know that I want to hold space for that. And that would be more of like a, hey girl, let's go to coffee kind of talk. That's not what we're doing here on the podcast. For those of us that are juggling all the balls at once, and it's like that low grade chronic stress, that's what I'm talking about here. We need to own it. We need to manage it. We need to understand the burden of cortisol on our mental and physical well-being. And we need to know that we are not victims of our schedule. We are actually in charge of them. And I'm saying this to you because I have to say it to myself, because I've very much felt like a victim this year. I mean, football practice and soccer practice, it's overtaking my life. But you know what? My husband and I are in the driver's seat of our schedules. And so looking to actually own and manage how much stress and making sure we're building a life that fits our capacity is so important. So A is for adapt stress. And I recognize that's a big one, probably a bigger conversation than the little 2 minutes I spent on it here, but I cannot skip over it. L is for love your liver. So your liver is actually your body's detox powerhouse. And there are 2 phases of detoxification in your body. The first phase is with your liver. The second is in your gut. And when we're talking cortisol and hormonal imbalances and hormonal fluctuations, we need that liver functioning well to get rid of the excess hormones that are floating through our body and those toxins that might be making the hormone imbalances worse. We need to love our liver. And we can do that by supporting it with things like cruciferous veggies, hydration, limiting alcohol, getting in the sauna, trying to do some lymphatic drainage practices, whether gua sha. I've totally gotten into gua sha lately. It's so fun and it feels good and it makes my face feel refreshed. So things like that, or getting massages, those I know are a bit more of a luxury, but the day-to-day stuff like eating your broccoli, the things our mom told us to do years and years ago, is really wonderful for supporting your liver. Now, I stands for increase awareness. This is what I'm talking about here on the show. Tracking your cycle, noting your symptoms, recognizing patterns. Awareness is power. And when you know what's happening inside your body, you can actually respond with more intention. Just like I know my give up on life days require a pause in my typical go-getter routine. And that's okay. F is fuel for balance. And this is where a lot of the work I do with my clients comes in. This is nourishing our hormones with protein, healthy fats, fiber-rich carbohydrates, creating meal patterns that support and stabilize our blood sugar. Like after you eat, you should feel energized. I had a client the other day who was in middle school, and she told me that her teacher told her she should feel tired after eating a meal. Now, whether or not her teacher said that, I don't know, but that's what she heard. And I just looked at her and said, oh, sweet girl, no. If you're tired, you've eaten too much, or we have an imbalance on our plate. After you eat your food, you should feel a spike in energy because that's literally what we just did. We boosted our fuel levels. We gave our body fuel, and that should energize us. So looking to find rhythms with this protein, balancing carbohydrates with fat. I mean, that's why we did the candy corns with the peanuts. But looking at, having whole meals is so powerful. And I think we underestimate that. I really do. I read a study just the other day talking about how a difference in just 360 calories, give or take, whether you're over or under, if we just adjust it by 360 calories, that is enough to rebalance hormones so that there's a more steady swing and we don't have some of the negative side effects. That's adjusting a snack, sister. Like, I think some of these tweaks to your diet are probably closer than you realize, and they're very much within reach, but we have to do, we got to look at it. We've got to do a detailed assessment. I can't tell you how many times I've done a GI map on folks or a complete and total nutrition assessment, and the recommendation has been, sister, you got to eat breakfast, or sister, you got to eat lunch because you're going too far in between meals that we're getting a high and low in your blood sugar. So fueling for balance. And then the last one, E, is embrace sleep. Guys, quality sleep, we talked about how it regulates that HPO axis, and that's the command center for our hormones. So without it, your whole hormone orchestra plays off key. Now, if you're in a season I was in a few years ago where babies are crawling into bed with you, and maybe I had the residual effects of that where they finally started to sleep in their own bed, but I just was on alert. I couldn't sleep through the night. Get aggressive about how you fuel that sleep. Invest in the right sleep supplements. One of my favorite things is helping folks create a sleep cocktail, I call it, with the right combination of melatonin, L-theanine, the right magnesium, so that you can set yourself up for a calming sleep. Wear blue light glasses. Find ways to calm your mind. This one is something that can take us a while, but man, it is worth it. And I'll tell you the one trick, the one non-nutrition hack that I have learned over the last, 4 years. I think I've struggled with insomnia it's been longer than that because it started with my babies. But it's been in the last couple of years, I finally started sleeping through the night. What really did it for me, and the thing that was the last piece of the puzzle that really clicked it all into place, was listening to something. So my brain didn't turn on. We're always in go mode. And so in combination with a nighttime routine, my nighttime cocktail, I started putting headphones in and just listening to books on tape. And if I wake up in the middle of the night, which I usually do, I just pop that back in my ear and my brain stays off. And that's been life-changing. But, I don't know if that'll work for you. It worked for me. But I think the point here is that we have to value sleep, and we have to put it as high on the priority list as we do our workouts or our fruits and veggies, because it is so directly correlated to how our hormones are balancing throughout the day. Okay, so to recap on a life, it's adapt stress, love your liver, increase awareness, fuel for balance, and embrace sleep. My friend, balanced hormones, they don't just happen by accident at this season in our life because there are so many changes, but they happen when we take a life. That sounded so wrong. Don't take a life. If you don't follow a life, you might take a life, because that's how crazy hormones are. Oh man, this is how you know you're getting a real raw version of me here on the show. Oh my gosh. Okay, so thanks for tuning in today. Don't take a life, but do follow the life recommendations. And we'll see you back here next week when we start talking about the mental side of these hormonal swings and how we can develop resiliency around that. And in the meantime, my friend, if you want more information about testing your hormones or connecting one-on-one, I'll pop some links in the show notes. We have a new quiz that's out and available for you to help you figure out the best place to get started. I can't wait to learn more about you and connect with you. We will see you right back here next Monday. Until then, cheers and happy eating. That's a wrap on today's Empowered Eating Pep Talk. If this hits home, be sure to leave a review and share it on your social media, tagging me at JessBrownRD. And girl, if you're ready to take your nutrition and mindset to that next level, I would love to get to know you more. Head on over to JessBrownRD.com to explore things like the Well-Fueled Academy, one-on-one coaching, and all the free resources I have to help you live, eat, and fuel your awesome. Until next time, sister, have an amazing day. Cheers and happy eating.